headed down to Acapulco. I know I'm headed down to Acapulco with the long white sands where I might have a chance. Yeah, we're gonna head down to Acapulco.
Thank you, Nathan.
That's worth falling for.
Yeah, that's worth falling for. Watchmybit.com. Be very important. Write that down and check it. I know many of you may be checking that right now. One of the great things about being here, by the way, if you ever notice, all you got to do is just go, I got a problem with my computer, and you'll be swamped with help. You notice that? In an environment like this. Well, hey, our next speaker, someone you're going to love this guy. I've watched him on Anarchast when he was interviewed by Jeff. Amazing, very practical, fun, and a great guy. He is a drug war insurgent turned humanitarian. And get this, he is an ex-top drug enforcement agent who flipped the script by producing a DVD series teaching how to never get busted for pot. How's that for a good thing to have? Never get busted. And this guy knows it. He knows it. Now, keep saying to yourself when you see him, yes, he was a cop. Yes, he was a cop. When you're going to see that, you're going to think, really? Yeah, really. Okay, reality show busting cops, and he had to flee the United States, the USSA. This is his first public appearance in 5 years. Ladies and gentlemen, get ready for a momentous time in your life as you get a chance to meet the amazing Barry Cooper. Woohoo!
Wow, that's beautiful. It's beautiful. Wow, I'm honored to be here. I really didn't think I'd be alive this long. I'm sure there's a lot of you out there who feel the same way, but I'm Barry Cooper. I was made famous 10 years ago for releasing DVDs that taught people how not to get busted for pot. At the time, thank you. At the time, my bosses gave an Associated Press interview, and they said I was one of the top narcotics officers in the nation. I didn't have the internet. That was pre-internet. So I believed I was doing a moral thing by placing people in jail for marijuana and other drugs. When I learned what I was doing was immoral, I flipped the script and I released the DVDs, which also led to a reality TV show, Busting the Cops. And I set up stings across the United States, tricking cops into illegal raids and such, and each stunt was to free somebody from prison, and we've been successful now in the last 10 years freeing over 300 drug defendants. Yeah. So I feel really good about that. The government didn't feel good about it, and they surprised me. I was raided twice, arrested 3 times. My wife at the time arrested twice. They took my autistic son for a year and a half and tied us up in court all over misdemeanors. The search warrant on my house was not for drugs, which it should have been because I've always got pot. But it was actually for my journalism. And at that moment, after they took my kid and I got my kid back, we decided to flee the U.S. because I was getting messages that the cops were going to kill me or put me in prison. And you know, my peers in the past either die or wind up in prison, and I didn't want to. So I sold 30 pounds of marijuana. I raised $30,000 in cash, secretly sold our cars and everything overnight. I did not have a passport for my son. At the time, we learned a passport wasn't needed for a cruise ship. So we took a cruise from Florida to Aruba, where I had a speedboat waiting, paid lots of money for it. Took us 14 miles into Venezuela, where I paid the Venezuelan government. At that time, Hugo Chavez was the president, and there was no extradition because what we had done was parental kidnapping because my stepson had a father who had visitation rights. So we stayed hidden in Venezuela as long as we could. It was a very rough country. And we finally moved to the border of Brazil, where they gave me political asylum for a couple years. I spent those 2 years getting all my legal stuff cleared up in the United States, which I did, which allowed me to get a passport for my son. And we immediately flew to Mexico, where I've been living for 3 years. I now live in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I run an expert witness firm. I work in all 50 states, but I do not travel back to the U.S. I still have warrants there. But I don't have to. It's a digital age, and we're freeing prisoners every day. And drug defendants, I provide strategies to defense teams, stuff they haven't heard about, and it's working. So I'm thrilled to be here. And I'm not complaining how I was treated in terms of the raids and arrests. That was my karma. Even though I was told I was doing the right thing by making all the drug arrests, it was the wrong thing. And those are dark humanitarian crimes. And a lot of people lost their freedom because of that. And it took a long time for me to get over the guilt of what I had done to all those people, to the point where I actually had to be on medicine for a while because it bothered me. I'm pretty sure I'm an empath. But now I feel like my karma is clear. You know, I faced the raids and I faced the arrests, and I continue every day tirelessly myself with the Never Get Busted crew, freeing prisoners. So I finally feel good about myself, and I don't feel guilty anymore, and that feels good. And that was a very tough battle. I quit telling cops, fuck you. But I still want to every now and then, don't you? I've learned and I feel like I've grown where I don't get upset at the individual cops anymore. I just get upset at the institutions that produce such, which makes it easier for me to be able to have a conversation with a police officer and not say that to them. So I'm very happy to be here, and I do need to recognize somebody. There's a very powerful woman in my life, and if it wasn't for her, we never would have made it through Never Get Busted, and that's my daughter in the blue hair. Stand up, Kelsey. So she had 5,000 of that weed money strapped to her while we were traveling. We put 5,000 on each kid and grabbed a backpack and hauled ass. So I actually recognize a lot of you. Some of you I don't, sorry. I know there's a lot of talent in this building. I understand we're short on time, but there is something I wanted to impart to you before I left. Before I got off the stage. And it's actually, if you want to title this speech, you could call it How to Win a Facebook War, or Arguing Properly, or Convincing the Masses, or it could be called what they taught me in college, rhetoric. Rhetoric is the art of persuasion, and it's important to persuade our audience. I'm convinced you have the right message. There's no doubt in my mind whatsoever, and you got to understand, I was convinced that I had the right message when I was locking people like you up. So I don't say it lightly when I say we have the right message. Anarchy is the only hope for humanity. I truly believe that. Every dark humanitarian crime, almost every dark humanitarian crime, especially on a mass level, can be traced to government and religion. So I feel like, as well as you, if we get rid of those institutions, we can begin to build a better planet. Well, one way to do that is through the art of persuasion. That's the definition of rhetoric, the art of persuasion. I know everybody in this room wants to be able to get their idea across to whomever in a believable way that causes them to believe you. Am I right? Raise your hand if you feel that way. Yeah. Well, you know, you only have to do 3 things, and this is not something I invented, but Aristotle actually teaches it in his book. Aristotle said, and I've used this in everything. I've used it selling cars. When I was a car dealer, I used it in my limo company. I used it when I was promoting cage fights. I used it when I was a Christian preacher. I used it when I was a cop. And now I'm using it for kind of flip the script and reverse the propaganda. We all know that propaganda, man, damn, it's not that humans are bad, it's humans are so good. We're basically obedient people. You tell us what to do, we're going to do it. You tell us to believe something long enough, we're going to believe it. That all propaganda is ingrained deeply in each of us, even to me this day. The CIA are masters, and there's thousands of CIA folks, they're everywhere. They are masters at propaganda. They know exactly what triggers DNA in human beings. So we got to turn that around and reverse the propaganda, and the way to do it is according to Aristotle. It's very simple. You only need 3 things, and the first one is charisma, the second one's logic, and then appeal to their emotions. So any argument that you want to get across or any idea you want to persuade somebody, you just lay those 3 things down, you're going to win. They're going to believe you. Charisma, which is credibility, logic, and emotions. Let's talk about charisma. And the reason this is very important to me, because anarchy is a fantastic idea, but it's no good to us if we can't get our point across, right? Well, and also, when you start applying these 3 things to an argument, to convince the audience, I want you to remember that don't argue to be right. People sense that. If you're arguing to be right, that's a turnoff. I raised my family and I raised my kids. We argue in this house not to be right, but so you can present facts and evidence to me to change me. Change me. If you can talk me out of anarchy, come on, bring it. I'll change, but so far I haven't seen that. So approach each argument as if, hey, okay, what do you have to say to change me? And if you can with logic and evidence, I'll change. And be sincere about that. So it's important to have the charisma or credibility. Nobody wants to listen to a person that doesn't have credibility, right? Credibility is ultra important when convincing the masses. That's the reason the government attacks the credibility of a person when they first come on the scene and start changing minds. For instance, when I first did the Fox interviews, anybody seen the Fox interviews? I knew they were going to attack my credibility because of this principle, and I was ready for it and didn't allow that to happen. Well, if you don't have a resume to claim to be credible to people on Facebook or whoever you're talking to, that's okay. You can use this credibility, and I use it all the time. I say, millions of people agree with me about anarchy. So remember that. You can use that as credibility. That establishes your credibility. Say, hey, millions of us agree. The government and everybody tries to make us believe we're a small pocket. We're not, bro. Listen, the people are waking up. They're everywhere in parts of this world. There's more of us than there are of them. Use that to your advantage. Tell these people, say, no, millions of us agree. And one other line I love to use when I'm trying to convince people, I say, millions of people agree with me, and men and women much smarter than I are the ones who taught me this. There are physicists and scientists and lawyers. They all agree. You're in the minority. Instantly, your credibility is established. Once your credibility is established, what's the second thing that Aristotle says you need to convince the masses, to persuade people? That is logic. Logic is not a problem with anarchists. So you got that down. We use logic every day to prove how crazy they are and how right we are, right? So logic's not hard. So you have the charisma, you have the logic. What was the third? What? Emotion, yes. Emotion's a very easy thing for me. I grew up a very passionate kid. I played football, Texas football. I grew up around some of the roughest men in the world. We were taught that force was necessary. Not only necessary, we were rewarded for force. The louder you could get, the harder you could punch, the harder you could hit in football, the more status you gained socially. So I grew up with the life of force. And back to the emotion part, I've always been a very passionate player. I cried every football game. Coach! Ah! And I still cry almost every week when I'm doing, oh, God damn, It's the emotions. So it's easy for me to get my emotions across to people. It may not be for you, but that's okay, because I have a plan. Remember, you've got the logic, you got the charisma, but you're still not going to convince the person until you complete the formula, which is appealing to their emotions, or another way to say it is trigger their emotions. Trigger their emotions. And that's not hard to do because of the pain and suffering and torture that people feel under these governments. Even if you haven't been to jail, or if the person you're talking to has never been imprisoned, there's something the government has done to them. Took their paycheck for back taxes, or made them go through school and get a license to cut hair, or anything. You can appeal to their emotions on so many different levels in this that it's easy. I like to bring up the madness. You know, there's 2 million people locked up in the United States. You've heard these statistics before. We got 80,000 people in the hole, bro. Don't forget that. 80,000 people in solitary confinement. If that doesn't trigger an emotion, you just tell a person to go inside their bathroom. I did this with my kids growing up. We all played jail. And we only put them in there for 30 minutes with a little bit of light and the bathroom shut. And I'm like, now live in that 23 hours a day for years and years and years. And that's what it's like. You know, the United Nations has already considered, which their government too, but blah, blah, but they considered solitary confinement a form of torture. So there's 80,000 people in the United States being tortured right now in the U.S. That's appealing to their emotions. So you flat out tell these people that you have credibility. You use logic, all the arguments you have, and appeal to their emotions, and you're going to win. You're going to win. You'll convince them. It's not a hard formula. And usually what happens, and you know you won when this happens, once you apply those three, they usually start name calling. Or they tell you to go smoke more pot. Or how much pot are you smoking? What's wrong with you? All that. That's called an ad hominem. And you need to remember that, ad hominem. The reason it's important to use that big word, because that gives you more credibility. Because you can type. Ad hominems do not work in a debate. In fact, when you're in college, I was on the debate team in college, and if you ever attacked another person's character, that's an ad hominem. If they name call, attack your character, it's an ad hominem. They got points deducted if you called them on it. So, Judge, that's ad hominem. They got points deducted, and I got points. Well, you need to tell that in Facebook. Hey, that's ad hominem. That doesn't work. Attacking my character, calling me names doesn't work, and it means you lost. They don't have facts or evidence from which to grasp, to argue any further, so they start the name calling. So when they start name calling, I used to do the, fuck you, don't call me a name, motherfucker, I'll come to Texas, I'll kick your ass, all that. I had to learn to quit doing that. I tell you who helped me quit doing that, and it's actually Mark Victor and Adam Kokesh. Their speaking styles are madly beautiful. You know, rhetoric is an art. Remember the definition of rhetoric? The art of persuasion. So these guys are masters at it. They persuade. They changed me. Actually, it was Adam Kokesh who turned me into an anarchist. I didn't know I'd been an anarchist all my life because I've always hated people telling me what to do. Yeah. So thanks for having me here. Thanks for having my family here. We're really honored and humbled, and we're approachable. Come up, talk to us. If you got any weed, I'm out. I didn't bring any with me. Peace, love, and never get busted. I'm Barry Cooper. Woo-hoo! Woo!
Listen to the mariachi play at midnight. Are you with me? Are you with me?